Want to welcome back a very special guest, someone you've heard from multiple times here on the Variety program, because we appreciate the good work that she does both on the political side and the policy side. Emily Seidel, welcome.
Thank you.
Listen, you got a lot going on.
Yes, we do.
A lot going on.
A lot going on.
Where should we start?
Well, can I choose?
Yeah.
All right. So last time y'all had me in here, first of all, this is a very nice setup. Last time we were around a conference table.
Has it been that long?
Yes. I mean, we did the live event down in D.C.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But last time was right before the 2022 midterms.
Mhm.
Yes.
And we were talking about how there was this red wave coming.
Mhm.
And I was saying when we were out in the field with the grassroots talking to voters, we did not see that red wave coming.
Hmm.
I want to use some of our time together to raise the flag on that again ahead of 2024.
Okay.
Because Biden is incredibly unpopular,
Yeah, right.
but his unpopularity is not winning these Senate races right now. And we see that in the polling. I can share some of our internal polling, but we also see that in the conversations that we're having with voters across the country right now. And so I'd love to talk about that if that's cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
please.
perfect.
Let's do it.
So I think there are a couple of things happening. So first of all, the Democratic incumbents in some of the tightest races. And so when I talk about these races, I'm talking about Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Montana, and Nevada.
Yep.
Those are the 5 races where AFP Action is engaged right now. You can also throw Michigan into the mix there. We're not engaged in that race yet. It's a little bit different because it's an open seat, right?
Yep.
The rest of these have Democratic incumbent senators
Yep.
running for re-election. So in these races, Biden has, on average, a negative 29-point image.
Yeah, and that ain't great.
People don't like it in these states.
Right.
But on average, the Democratic incumbents have a net positive rating of about 2 points.
Hmm.
And so that's a 30-point spread.
Yeah, it's not sticky like it used to be.
No,
Right.
and you hear this when you're talking to voters at the door as well. I was in Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh, talking to voters a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to this guy who's outside sweeping his porch, so he couldn't get away from me, and he was pretty emblematic of what we're hearing from a lot of these swing voters. First of all, when you ask them just generally about the election, they start at the top of the ticket. These swing voters, by and large, are not excited about either of the choices that they have.
Yeah.
Great opportunity to pivot to talk about the Senate races. And when I started talking to him about the Senate race in Pennsylvania, he said, well, I've heard a little bit about this Dave McCormick guy, some good, some bad. I want to learn more. He said, but Senator Casey, I think he's a good man. I like him, right? Like that's how it's feeling on the ground. You're seeing it reflected in the polling. It's the power of incumbency.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Second thing is split ticket voting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a thing, right? It happens.
Mhm.
I in 2012,
Oh,
I
big
think
time. Yeah.
Romney won by 14 points,
Yeah.
but Senator Tester was reelected by 3 points, right? So 1 in 5 voters basically split their ticket at Montana. We continue to see that in some of the numbers right now, but on steroids. So again, across these Senate states that I mentioned, 30% on average of the voters who are saying they're going to vote for the Democrat also don't like Biden. So they're separating in their minds the Democratic president from the Democratic senator in a major, major way.
Yeah.
And this is really happening, especially amongst swing voters. So in Ohio, deep red state at this point, didn't used to be, but is now, Trump's going to win that state.
Yeah.
We have in our internal polls Moreno down just outside of the margin of error against Senator Brown. But Biden is losing swing voters in Ohio by like 7 points.
Yeah.
But Brown is winning them by 15.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge. And I'll tell you, the last thing that I'll say is, as you talk to these swing and these independent voters across the country, one of the biggest surprises, quite frankly, that I've had is they are not holding their Democratic senators accountable for the decisions that they've made on their behalf in Washington, D.C. So you go to the door and you ask them, what's the most important thing to you? What's the biggest policy issue in your mind right now? And you're going to hear one of two things. Either you're going to hear something about the economy, inflation, and cost of living, or you're going to hear about border security and immigration. And even within states, in like Northwest Wisconsin, it's one thing. In Southeast Wisconsin, it's a different.
Regional differences.
The value of being in the grassroots, talking to voters, being able to meet them where they are, of course. But when we start to then engage them on those issues and educate them about what their senator has done in Washington, D.C., or more to the point, especially on border security, not done, they're not thinking about that.
Yeah.
And so these senators are not paying a political price yet for supporting the radical Biden-Harris agenda.
Yeah.
So those numbers that you laid out are terrifying to anybody who cares about changing the majority in the Senate. And everything that you said, I can see how it gets that way. But I want to dig in on the last point you made. And I know that you guys spend time at doors. You talk to people. You don't just drop off lit and walk away. You are asking them questions to get the answers that you just told our listeners about. I'm wondering, when the people are hitting the doors and having these conversations, are there any messages that make the voters think, oh wow, you know what, Bob Casey really is a problem on the border, because he has been voting for open borders and Biden and Schumer and everything. Is there anything that you think is working?
So on the border, I mean, people are just worried about their families. They're worried about their safety, their kids at school, and asking somebody for an Advil and it not being Advil. I mean, the thing that I'm seeing work the most right now actually is more on the economy side, because it's just fear on the border security side, fear for the safety of their families. But when we talk about border security, they recognize that stunts like what the president did this week, those things aren't going to actually solve the problem. We need Congress to act. And we can get into a conversation about that. That's one of the big campaigns that AFP separately is running right now, actually, is the Secure Borders, Secure America campaign. But really, people just want to talk about their fears on the border and be heard. When you start talking about the kitchen table issues, the economy, inflation, and cost of living, that's where you see this sort of aha moment when they are able to connect the dots between the votes for trillions of dollars in reckless spending, the support for a regulatory environment that just doesn't make sense, and they can understand intuitively how it's stifling business and our economy, and just the shutting off of energy production that they feel every time they go to fill up their gas tanks. I mean, those are the sorts of things that start to connect the dots for the voters as we're talking to them.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, too, because you've got on the top of the ticket two ubiquitously known individuals in Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I mean, you can be anywhere in this country. You may love them, you may hate them, but you got an opinion about the two of them.
Yeah.
And then you got a bunch of incumbents, as you said. Very difficult to beat Senate Democratic or Republican incumbents, for that matter. Incumbency is a very big advantage in Senate elections. And then you've got overlapping on top of that Pennsylvania with McCormick. You've got Hovde in Wisconsin, obviously Bernie Moreno in Ohio, Tim Sheehy in Montana. You're talking about a bunch of people who are running for the first time in a general election statewide. So there's a name ID issue.
Huge issue.
And there is a incumbency issue, and then there is obvious ballot separation at the top, because everybody knows who these people are. So it compounds, I think, what it is that you're talking about here, in that if we're going to get to a place where we're winning these Senate elections, you got to close the ballot gap. You got to increase the name ID. We have to do a lot of education, and that's what you guys are doing in AFPA.
That's exactly what we're doing. So first, on the education gap. So Bidenomics is one of the big campaigns that we're doing. We just launched our bus tour nationwide just before Memorial Day. I love the fact that the president thought that the economy was so great he wanted to name it after himself.
It's wild, right? What a dumb move.
It's so dumb.
In a history full of dumb moves.
But then it immediately backfired, and it's like his comms team said, okay, well, never mind, and the rest of the plan, let's just put it on the shelf.
It is funny how quickly they walked away from it.
But they didn't pay attention to the URL.
Yeah.
So
this
we
was
bought.
the greatest.
So you bought
I
the
love this
we
thing.
bought
I love this so much.
Bidenomics.com.
Yeah.
And you guys
Right.
can go
Did it.
and read the truth about his policies, his agenda, and how it impacts the economy. So we get out there with the URL, and then we start doing these events. Gas stations and grocery stores, the places where the Biden economy and his Bidenomics agenda is hurting people the most.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 2 years,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, this is not an outfit that showed up yesterday.
No,
You
and
guys are deeply embedded in these communities.
and I'll tell you, the stories that we continue to hear. I was just down in Florida doing a gas station event with a team down there, and there was a guy who was getting kind of impatient because his wife was pumping the gas and she was talking to us for a long time. So he got out of his car and he said, "Honey, you need some help with the gas." And he didn't understand what was happening. So we explained. And then he started telling us about how he owns a welding business and how his employees are suffering, but he can't afford to pay them
Yeah.
anymore. And he broke down in tears and got all embarrassed and got back in the
man.
car. But that's not a one-off, right?
No.
Like, people are really hurting. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And right now, under Bidenomics, they have to pay over $1,000 more on average a month just to afford the standard of living that they had before. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You can't even dream of
Totally.
pumping up $1,000 more a month.
Totally.
So this is what this is how we can connect with people and then connect them to what's, the agenda in Washington and how it impacts their daily lives, to start to hold accountable the lawmakers who have enabled this agenda. We're doing it across states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Montana, Nevada, and many congressional districts where these congressmen and women could have stood in the way of this.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't, all the way from the shores of Alaska to the Jersey Shore, out east and everywhere in between. This is the power of a national grassroots army.
Yeah, and I think
do this.
like the beauty of what AFPA, what you guys do is you're talking to people who are taking kids to softball practice, right? Or they're working 2 jobs, trying to make things work. They got stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right? They're not just sitting there like consuming political news all day. They'll think about it when they got time to vote. But this is not anywhere near the front burner. They know they're suffering, but like connecting all of that is not, they don't have time for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you guys do is a trusted voice within their communities. Go talk to people, let them know, help people connect the dots on it. Because you're right, at the end of the day, all the people who we're trying to beat are the people who created all this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and it's the same thing that we're doing on the border. So I said earlier that people are just really concerned, really scared about safety and security. And so what we want to do is make it possible for them to be advocates for real, meaningful congressional action, because that's what it's going to take to actually solve this problem.
Yeah.
So we've got a nationwide tour going on right now. We've been fortunate to partner with retired Border Chief Chris Clem. Many people have probably seen him on TV before. He's fantastic. He's an advisor to us on this issue, and we're out there helping people become activists to encourage Congress to recognize that it's not just there's not just one solution to this. We need more agents. We need more wall.
Yeah.
We need technological solutions, more surveillance on the border. There's so much that needs to happen, and it's going to take congressional action to get it done. So again, we're doing this tour specifically in the places where we believe there are congressmen and women and senators who could take principled action here, haven't, need to be held accountable and get out of the way, or start buckling down and actually getting it done.
So I'm curious on the issue of the border, because we talked a lot about the economy and inflation and all that sort of stuff. Because I've heard from a couple of pollsters, and I'm curious if this has ever come up in any of your polling, that there's an economic message on the issue of border security, specifically with suburban swing voters, that resonates, and that is like local school district funding getting diverted out of their community to house migrants, to do all of these things where, like, now it's not just an issue on the southern border or an issue of like crime and fentanyl. It's literally my school district. Have you seen anything like that?
A little bit. It's mostly, from what we've been hearing from the swing voters that we've been talking to, it's mostly more of a security issue than a funding issue. But I could see that creeping in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, increasingly. Look, I'm glad you're doing this specifically, in addition to all the great work that you guys do, because I feel like it's the first time, I've been doing it 20 years. It's the first time where the issue is bled beyond a center-right conservative coalition of people who are concerned about this into the middle and the center-left.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe even deeper into the left. And that everybody sort of recognizes we got a real problem here. Maybe that just moment in time is the right opportunity to actually do something, because Lord knows people have tried
Yeah.
and come up snake eyes for 15 years on this thing.
Yeah. Amen. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I just say quickly, one of the things I love about your project more than anything is that you actually are out talking to real people, and that's something Joe Biden would never do. You know,
Well, I don't think he can, frankly.
But even if he like does like a big PR event in some state out there, it's completely like washed with Dem operatives, and like he's never actually talking to anybody real, because anybody real would give them a serious piece of their mind.
Well, he'll
right?
ask him to do a push-up contest and call him fat.
Well, my point is, you're giving voice to a lot of people who feel like they have none.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very special project, and I'm really glad you guys are doing it, because if you weren't, who would?
Well, thank you. And so we've got to do this voter education on these issues. We've also got to go out and win these races.
Yeah.
And so AFP Action, at this point, we've knocked on over 1 million doors just across these 5 Senate races.
That's great.
And we're not going to let up. One of the things that I think is important, and would love anybody to join us if they are willing
Where can
to
they find
volunteer some time. You can go to americansforprosperity.org. You can go to afpaction.com. You can go to Bidenomics.com.
Yeah.
You can go to securebordersecureamerica.com. There are a lot of different places that you can reach and sign up with any of these things that we're doing. But the point is that all of it together is so critical. You can't just do the education piece. You can't just do the election piece. You have to do all of it. And that's what, I'm blessed to work with this organization that does this 24/7, 365, whether it's an election year or non-election year. We're the only group that can walk and chew multiple pieces of gum all at the same time, coast to coast. And that's what it's going to take to turn this country around.
We've seen it firsthand and can absolutely testify to that. You guys can do it, and you are doing it, which we greatly appreciate. We also appreciate the friendship here at the Ruthless Variety Program. We've enjoyed working with you guys over the years.
Likewise.
And I hope as you're learning more, you keep coming back and giving us tidbits from the field, because this is information that you're not going to get in any kind of polling.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I love every time she comes on the show. Her group is huge, and they're doing really, really important work, and we are fortunate to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, legit boots on the ground. They're moving the ball.
Yeah, and I think it's important canary in the coal mine on some of these Senate races, some of the stuff she was talking about. We missed an opportunity there in 2022 in a lot of these places. I think, like, the silver lining is, and we've talked about this previously on the show, is like now there's an apples to apples comparison of the Donald Trump years and the Biden years. 4 years of the economic downturn under Joe Biden.
Good point.
And I think that argument will be easier to make to these suburban swing voters about like what Bidenomics has done to you. We had trouble breaking through on that message in 2022, and I hope we can turn it around.
And look, she highlighted something in my mind that I think we just need to be more explicit about, right? If you have a problem with Joe Biden, if you're not going to vote for Joe Biden, if you know anybody who's not going to vote for Joe Biden, by God, don't let them vote for another Democrat in the federal level on this ticket.
Yeah.
They're the ones that made it happen.
That's right. Enablers.
They're the ones that did it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like this doddering old idiot is sitting in the White House and he gets a microphone. He doesn't have a bully pulpit, whatever. These guys willingly went in and enforced a progressive, radical left agenda, voted for all of it, soup to nuts. Every time a border bill came up, nope.
That's right.
They don't want it. Every time any sort of economic growth thing was discussed, nope. We're all for just flooding our marketplace with cash and increasing inflation and everything. They did it. Mm-hmm. These are the people. Like, if you're living it, I was so struck by the Bob Casey example that you talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Where somebody's like, I think he's a good man. Oh, do you? Why? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know what your family, like, if you felt the pain of the economy, if you felt inflation, if you have anybody you know who's struggling, they did it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bob Casey did it. Did you hear him ask a single question? He didn't ask a single question. His vote was never in question. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever saw, well, is Bob Casey going to vote for this? No, there's never a discussion. Everybody's like, of course he's going to vote. He votes Democrat regardless. He's going to vote liberal policies regardless. Sherrod Brown, same thing. Right? John Tester, same thing. He loves to pick something that doesn't matter, where his vote doesn't matter. He's like, oh, no, I'm on the other side of that. Mm-hmm. Or he'll talk tough on the board. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, we need border security. He's like, I don't know, buddy. You've been here for 20 years.
They talk tough, they don't vote tough.
They don't vote tough.
He's got a new attack ad up on Tim Sheehy saying he's like a pal with lobbyists or something. And you know who took like the most lobbyist
the number
cash?
one.
John Tester.
The number one. The number one recipient of special interest money, lobbyist money, is John Tester. So, like, don't let your friends and neighbors process this. And it's, look, I understand there's some split ticket stuff. We may have different opinions and different relationships downtown. I don't. But some people do. And if you do, that's fine. But they're not senators.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden got away with a like nice Uncle Joe con. That's what all these other red state Dem senators are counting on.
Yeah.
They're
They can get away
counting
with
on
that
it.
con.
They're counting on it. But they've been the chief enablers of all the pain that you know now.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at your foreign policy. You know how easy it would be for Congress to figure out a way to hem this administration in if you had Republican majorities? They won't do it. They won't even ask a question about it.
Shit, the border would be
No.
fixed in a minute.
Just build a pier that falls apart in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then
And we all paid for.
For Gaza.
and then
you
it-
know?
it for Gaza.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to give
For
money
Gaza.
to Hamas. Yeah.
So anyway, hold these people accountable. We're going to do more of this. She just helped illuminate all of this to me in a way that, like, we got to spend more time doing it because
Yeah.
apparently some people aren't still connecting. None of you
Yeah.
who listen to the
Y'all know.
program, you know what we're talking about.